Some amendments were made to the City of Minot's 2024 preliminary budget at this week's regular council meeting. City Manager Harold Stewart says the Minot Area Chamber Economic Development Corporation, Visit Minot, and the Souris River Planning Council got additional funding for economic development efforts. He says city employees now have alternative options for how they want to structure time off. This year's budget is still lower than next year's.
Even though the budget shows that we're spending more money, we're actually spending money that we had previously set aside for major projects.
It includes the Northwest Area Water Supply Project, the next phases of flood control and road maintenance. The council will have to approve it again on second reading later this month, and we'll have a copy of the preliminary budget on our website.